The room felt tight the second I walked in. Not small, just heavy, like the air had already made up its mind about me. My mother's dining room was exactly the same as always. Same polished mahogany table. Same stiff chairs no one ever relaxed in. Same chandelier that made everything look colder than it needed to be. And the smell, burnt roast. Diane Sullivan never undercooked anything. Ever. She believed overcooking meant control. No surprises, no risks. That smell sat in the back of my throat the second I took my seat. No one said anything. My father sat at the head of the table, hands flat against the wood, like he was about to deliver a verdict, not a conversation. Marcus Sullivan didn't do discussions. He did decisions. My mother sat to his right, posture, tight eyes already glossy, like she was preparing to cry on cue. And Chloe, of course Chloe sat right next to him. Perfect placement. The golden child always stayed within arm's reach of the throne. She held a tissue in one hand. Designer, soft, probably cost more than my first phone bill. Her mascara was flawless, but her eyes were just red enough to suggest she'd been crying or practicing. I sat across from all of them, back straight, shoulders relaxed, hands still. 6 years in Army Cyber Command teaches you how to sit through pressure without reacting. You learn fast that the first person to move loses something, so I didn't move. I just waited. The silence stretched. No one touched their food. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't dinner. This was an ambush. My father finally leaned forward a fraction. Not much. Just enough to signal he was about to speak. Kendra, he said. Flat, controlled, not warm, never warm. We need to discuss something important. I didn't respond. I just looked at him. Let him keep talking. He slid a folder onto the table. Slow, deliberate. The kind of movement meant to feel official. It stopped right in front of me. I didn't reach for it. Not yet. We've been helping your sister, he continued, as any responsible parents would. I glanced at Chloe. She lowered her eyes, pressed the tissue to her cheek like she was barely holding it together. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it. She's been under a lot of pressure, my mother added softly. The boutique. It's been difficult. Of course it has. Chloe's luxury boutique was never about profit. It was about image. Photos, social media, looking successful without actually building anything real. I kept my voice neutral. How much? That was the first thing I said. One question. My father didn't answer immediately. He tapped the folder once. Open it. I held his gaze for a second longer. Then I reached forward and flipped it open. Paperwork. Clean. Organized. Prepared. A consolidation loan agreement. My name was already printed in the borrower section. That made my jaw tighten just slightly. I kept reading. Numbers, pages, terms. And then I saw it. $312,000. I didn't react. Not externally. Inside, everything went still. My father spoke again, slower this time, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. Chloe's boutique is carrying some temporary debt. $300,000. Temporary, right? We've arranged a solution, he said. This loan consolidates everything into a manageable structure. Manageable for who? You're going to sign it. There it was, no request, no discussion, a command. Because family takes care of family, he added, like that settled it. I closed the folder halfway, looked up at him. Let me make sure I understand, I said. My voice stayed calm. Even, measured. You want me to take on her debt? Chloe let out a small shaky breath. It's not like that, she whispered. I had some setbacks. And the market, I didn't look at her. Not yet. My father cut her off. It is exactly like that, he said. And it's not a request. He leaned back slightly, folding his arms. If you refuse, he continued, you are no longer our daughter. My mother gasped quietly, like even she thought that sounded harsh, but not harsh enough to stop him. The room went silent again, but this time it felt different. Heavier, like something had just locked into place. I looked down at the contract again, at my name, at the number, at the signatures waiting for me. And then I looked up, at Chloe. She was watching me now. Really watching me, waiting, expecting something, tears, panic, maybe anger, submission most likely. That's what she'd always gotten. That's what they all expected. I held her gaze, and for a second I saw it. Not fear, not guilt, expectation. She really believed I was going to fix this, just like that. Because that's how it had always worked in this family. She made the mess, someone else cleaned it up, usually me. The fact that they weren't asking, they were assuming, and suddenly, it wasn't stressful, It wasn't overwhelming, it was absurd. Completely unbelievably absurd. A small sound slipped out before I could stop it. Then another, and then I laughed. Not polite, not nervous, not forced. A real laugh. Sharp, cold, honest. It echoed in the room, bouncing off the walls like something out of place. My mother froze. "Oh my God," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're still driving that?" A few people laughed. Not mean, just easy. I shrugged. "It works." She tilted her head. "I mean, yeah. You should come by the boutique sometime," she added. "Might inspire you to upgrade." I looked at her, really looked at her. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect illusion. And I knew exactly how much debt was sitting behind that smile, exactly how unstable everything was. But I didn't say it. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded. Maybe that was it. Because I didn't need to win that moment. I didn't need validation from people who only respected what they could see. I let her have it. I let my parents smile proudly. I let the room believe whatever it wanted. Because in my line of work, you learn something fast. The loudest person in the room is usually hiding the biggest problem. And the more confident they sound, the worse it usually is. So I stayed quiet, watched, waited, and let them keep talking. Because I knew something they didn't. And it was only a matter of time before it surfaced. I let her mock my cheap car. I let my parents praise her fake success. Because in my line of work, you learn very quickly that the loudest people in the room are usually the ones hiding the most expensive secrets. I stared at the screen a second longer than I should have. Didn't blink, didn't move, just processed. "Miss Sullivan." The investigator's voice pulled me back. Neutral tone, professional, careful. He had that look people get when they're about to point out something uncomfortable but don't know how you'll react. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "Go ahead," I said. He turned the monitor just enough for me to see it clearly. "I'm going to need you to explain this," he said. There was no accusation in his voice, just procedure. Standard protocol for a clearance renewal. Top-tier contracts don't tolerate financial instability, too much risk, too much leverage for the wrong people. I already knew that. I'd been on the other side of that system. I looked at the number, once, then again, 480, my credit score, 480. For a second it didn't register, not because I didn't understand what I was seeing, but because it didn't make sense. At all, I keep my life tight. No missed payments, no unnecessary debt, no exposure, everything tracked, everything controlled. That number didn't belong to me. I felt it before I reacted. That shift. The one where your body goes still but your mind speeds up. Heart steady, breathing even. But everything in your head starts moving faster, breaking things down. Mistakes are small. That wasn't small. That was structural. I leaned forward. "Can you pull the full report?" I asked. He hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "Of course." He typed for a moment. The screen refreshed. And then it all came up, line by line, account by account. I didn't rush, didn't scroll fast. I read everything, carefully, like I would in any other investigation. 4 credit lines, all maxed out. Payment history, destroyed. Late notices stacked like someone had stopped caring months ago. Then I saw the first date, 18 months back. That's when it started. Clean insertion, no spikes, no alerts. Just new accounts appearing quietly. Whoever did this knew exactly how to avoid early detection. I kept going. A commercial lease. That made my jaw tighten slightly. Business address tied to it. Familiar, too familiar. He didn't get any of that. "What's the address on the statements?" I asked. He clicked into the details. Read it out loud. P.O. Box, registered in. I didn't need him to finish. The intent. This wasn't random. This wasn't a stranger pulling numbers off the dark web. This was targeted, personal, close. They didn't just use my name. They used my entire identity, social security number. I looked back down at the contract. And that's when it hit me. Not slowly, not in pieces. All at once. The number, the structure, the timing, the absolute confidence sitting across from me. My father's face tightened instantly. Chloe just stared at me, confused. I leaned back slightly, still laughing under my breath, shaking my head. "You're serious," I said. No one answered. They didn't know how. Because I wasn't reacting the way I was supposed to. I looked at Chloe again, really looked at her this time. "You actually think I'm going to sign this?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. My father slammed his hand lightly on the table. "You think this is funny?" he snapped. I met his eyes. Still smiling. "Yeah," I said. "I do." That made him go still, completely still, like he couldn't process what he was hearing. My mother finally found her voice. "Kendra, please," she said. "This isn't a joke. Your sister needs you." I let out one last quiet laugh. Then I closed the folder, pushed it back across the table. Slow, controlled, deliberate. "No," I said. Just one word. Calm, final. Chloe's face changed. Not sadness, not panic, something sharper. "How can you say that?" she snapped. "We're family." There it was, the word they always used when they wanted something. Family. I stood up, smooth, unhurried. "I agree," I said. They all looked at me, waiting. I looked at my father, then my mother, then Chloe. "But family doesn't do this," I said. And I let that sit there, heavy, uncomfortable, real. My father's face turned white with rage. My mother covered her mouth. Chloe just stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. They thought my laughter meant I was breaking, that I'd finally snapped under pressure. They had no idea at all, that the $300,000 they were trying to hand me was already tied to a federal criminal investigation. And they weren't the victims, they were the targets. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had the people who were supposed to protect you treat you like a backup plan instead? Like you only mattered when they needed something, and if you were sitting in my chair right then, would you have signed it or would you have laughed too? If you want to hear how this really unfolded, make sure you're subscribed. Because this wasn't the moment everything fell apart. This was the moment everything finally made sense. I walked out of that dining room without looking back. Not at my father, not at my mother, not at Chloe. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I just left. Calm. Controlled. Like I always did. Because this wasn't new. Not really, this dynamic. It had been building for years. You don't get blindsided like that unless the groundwork was already there. And in my family, the roles were assigned early. Chloe was the showpiece. I was the utility. She got attention. I got expectations. She got support. I got lectures. And the crazy part, they really believed that was fair. I figured it out a long time ago, somewhere between my 3rd overnight shift and my 4th deployment cycle. Army Cyber Command doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about results. You sit in a windowless room for 16 hours straight, staring at code tracking threats you can't see but know are there. No sunlight, no distractions. Just screens, data, and the constant awareness that if you miss something, someone else pays for it. You learn discipline fast. You learn silence even faster. No one claps when you do your job right. That's the expectation. And I was good at it. Really good. While I was working those shifts, Chloe was building something too. Just not the same kind of thing. She called it a brand. Started with Instagram, photos, outfits, filtered coffee shots with captions that sounded deep but said nothing. My parents loved it. They didn't understand what I did, but they understood followers. They understood attention. They understood appearances. So they funded it. Every step. New car co-signed by Marcus. Luxury apartment paid for, just until the brand takes off. The boutique, that was the big one. Diane called it an investment in Chloe's future. I called it a liability. They leased a storefront in a high-end district, way above what any new business should touch. But Chloe didn't care. Because the store wasn't meant to make money, it was meant to look like it did. Clean shelves, minimal inventory, expensive decor, everything curated for photos, not sales, and online she looked successful. That's all that mattered. Meanwhile, I'd come home on leave, sit at that same dining table, and listen to them talk about her like she was building an empire. She's so driven. She understands modern business. She's not afraid to take risks. Then they'd look at me. "You're too rigid, Kendra. You've always been like that. All structure. No creativity." My father liked one word in particular. Grunt. He'd say it like a diagnosis, like I had chosen the wrong life, like discipline was a flaw. I never argued. There was no point. People only hear what fits their version of reality. And in theirs, Chloe was the future. I was just stable, reliable, useful, not impressive, not interesting, just there. So I stopped trying to explain myself. I focused on my work, moved up quietly, handled things that never made headlines but mattered. And when it was time to transition out of the military, I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't ask for advice. I didn't even tell them the details. I just made my move. Private sector, corporate security, high-level contracts. The kind that pays well because the consequences of failure are expensive. Very expensive. My first offer was more than I expected. The second was better. I took it, signed the paperwork. And just like that, I went from military salary to something different, comfortable, stable, powerful in a quiet way. I bought a house, nothing flashy, 2 bedrooms, clean, functional, in a neighborhood where people minded their own business. I paid for it myself. No co-signers, no help, just mine. Then I bought a car. Also nothing flashy, reliable, low profile, the kind of car no one looks at twice. And that was exactly the point. Because I knew my family. I knew how they thought. And I knew one thing for sure. The moment they realized how much I was making, I wouldn't be their daughter anymore. I'd be their solution, their backup plan, their safety net. So I stayed quiet. When they asked, I kept it vague. Work's good, busy, nothing exciting. They didn't push, because they didn't care enough to. They were too busy talking about Chloe, her store, her followers, her growth. Even when the cracks started showing. Late shipments, empty shelves, quiet weekdays that stretched into quiet weekends. They ignored it, because acknowledging failure would break the illusion. And my parents had invested too much into that illusion to let it go, so they doubled down. More money, more support, more excuses. She's just scaling. Every business struggles at first. You wouldn't understand. Kendra, it's not your world. They were right about one thing. It wasn't my world. Because in my world, numbers matter, results matter, reality matters. And reality doesn't care about appearances. I saw it coming before they did. Before Chloe did. But I didn't say anything because, again, there was no point. Then came the family gathering, extended relatives, cousins I barely talked to, aunts who judged everything, the usual. I showed up in my car, parked next to Chloe's. Hers was newer, louder. Leased, but no one mentioned that. I walked in, said hello, kept things simple. And then Chloe saw me. Her eyes dropped to my keys, then back up. That little smile, the one she used when she thought she had an audience. If you're into that whole minimalist thing. More laughter. She stepped closer, showing off her outfit like it was part of the conversation. Designer, everything. Shoes alone probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Running possibilities. Looking for the breach. There has to be a mistake, the investigator added almost cautiously. I shook my head once. No, I said, there's not. Because mistakes don't look like that. Then the loan, the big one, business loan. $312,000. There it was, the number. The same one sitting on that dining table tonight. Except this version wasn't packaged neatly in a solution. This one was raw, defaulted, bleeding. I didn't say anything. The investigator watched me waiting, probably expecting panic or confusion, maybe denial. I already knew, but I let him say it anyway. Registered to Diane Sullivan, my mother. I sat back, slow, controlled, and that was the moment it clicked. Not the accounts, not the debt. Credit profile, history, everything. And they didn't rush it. They built it, step by step, careful, deliberate, like someone who believed they wouldn't get caught, or worse, like someone who believed they were entitled to it. The investigator cleared his throat. Ms. Sullivan, do you recognize any of these accounts? I looked at the screen one more time, then at him. No, I said. That's what I thought, he replied quietly. He paused, then added, this will affect your clearance until it's resolved. Of course it would. That was the real problem, not the debt. The exposure, the vulnerability, someone had just turned my clean record into a liability. And in my line of work, that's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. I nodded once. Understood. He studied me for a second. You're taking this very calmly. I almost smiled. Occupational habit, I said. Because panic doesn't solve breaches. Process does. I stood up, gathered my things. I'm going to need a copy of everything, I added. Full report, all account details. He nodded immediately. I'll have it sent over. Good. I paused at the door, then looked back. One more thing, I said. If anyone asks, this conversation stays procedural. He blinked. Of course. Good. Then I left. The moment I got to my car, I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, thinking. Not about what happened. That part was clear. But about what came next. Most people would have gone straight to their parents' house, kicked the door down, demanded answers, created noise, emotion, conflict. But that doesn't solve anything. It just warns the problem that you found it. And once it knows you're looking, it adapts, it hides. It covers its tracks. I'd seen it too many times, in networks, in systems, in people. So I did what I was trained to do. I went quiet, completely quiet. No calls, no texts, no confrontation. I pulled the report the second it hit my inbox. Downloaded everything, saved copies, started mapping it out. Timeline first, then access points, then behavior patterns. Every account, every transaction, every decision they made. Because that's what this was now. An investigation, and I knew exactly where it was leading. I just needed to prove it. Most people would have driven straight to their parents' house and kicked the door down. But the Army taught me a fundamental rule of cyber warfare. When you find a parasite in your network, you don't scream at it, you lock the perimeter, and you prepare the trap. I didn't call them, not that night, not the next day, not at all. I treated it like what it was, a breach. And once you confirm a breach, you don't make noise. You isolate, you document, you build control. The first thing I did was lock everything down, credit freeze, all 3 bureaus. Not the soft alert most people use. A hard freeze, immediate, no new lines, no movement, no access without me. It took less than 30 minutes. Clean, efficient. By the time I was done, whatever system they had been using to move money through my name was sealed. Then I filed the reports. FTC identity theft affidavit. Full documentation, every account listed, every discrepancy flagged. Then I C3, FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Most people don't go that far. They file with the bank, maybe argue with a credit bureau. I don't do maybe. I do layers. Because layers create pressure. And pressure forces mistakes. After that, I sat back. Not to relax, to think. Because this wasn't just identity theft. It was structured, too clean to be random, too consistent to be careless. Whoever did it understood systems, understood timing, understood how to avoid detection long enough to build real exposure. That narrowed it down fast. I opened my laptop, pulled everything into one workspace. Accounts, dates, locations. Then I started cross-referencing. IP logs, application timestamps, access points. You'd be surprised how often people think digital fraud is invisible. It's not. It leaves patterns. You just have to look for them. And I knew exactly where to look. Within 2 hours, I had enough to confirm what I already suspected. Every major application tied back to a single network. Residential, consistent, familiar. My parents' house, same IP block, same provider, same location. They hadn't even tried to mask it. That told me something important. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong, or worse, they thought they were untouchable. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the screen for a moment. Then I made the next call. Harrison Vance, the voice answered, sharp, direct, no wasted words. I'd heard of him before, federal fraud litigator, the kind of attorney people hire when things are already bad. Or about to be. This is Kendra Sullivan, I said. I need representation. A brief pause. What kind of situation? Identity theft. Structured, family involvement, 6 figures. Another pause, longer this time. Then come in tomorrow. No hesitation, no small talk. That's how I knew I picked the right one. His office was exactly what I expected. Minimal, organized, no distractions. He didn't offer coffee, didn't ask about my day. He just sat across from me and said, show me, so I did. Everything. Credit report, account breakdown, IP analysis, timeline. He didn't interrupt, didn't react much either, just watched, listened, occasionally made a note. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. Your family opened fraudulent accounts under your identity, he said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. And you've already filed with the FTC and IC3. Yes. He nodded once. Good. That limits their options. He tapped the table lightly. The IP logs are clean, no masking, that's sloppy. I didn't respond, because I already knew. They used a PO, box registered to your mother, he added. Yes, also sloppy, he paused, then looked directly at me. What outcome do you want? That's the question most people hesitate on, not me. I want my name cleared, I said. Completely, he nodded. And then I held his gaze. I want the system to do what it does. That was enough. He didn't push. Didn't ask if I wanted to keep it in the family. Didn't suggest mediation. He just nodded again. Then we proceed clean. And that's exactly what we did. He handled the legal side. I handled the technical. Together we built the case, document by document. Every forged signature, every application, every timestamp, everything lined up. No gaps, no assumptions, just facts. He filed additional documentation with the banks. Triggered internal fraud investigations. Not loud, not aggressive, quiet, precise. The kind of pressure that builds slowly. Then he did something I appreciated. He didn't shut everything down at once. He staged it. Too fast and they panic, he said. Too slow and they adapt. We control the timing. So we started with access points, small disruptions, cards declining randomly, transactions failing, nothing dramatic. Just enough to create confusion. Then came the bigger move. Commercial account freeze. The one tied to the boutique. The one keeping Chloe's operation alive. He initiated it without warning. No notice. No negotiation. Just stopped it. I didn't need to be there to know what happened next. I could picture it. Chloe at the register, trying to run a payment. Swipe, declined, again, declined. Smile getting tighter, trying to play it off, blaming the system, telling herself it was temporary. Then calling the bank. Getting vague answers, no resolution, because there wasn't one. Behind the scenes, everything was locking, account by account, line by line. And they had no idea why. No idea who. No idea how deep it went. I didn't contact them. Didn't give them a warning. Didn't give them a chance to prepare. Because this wasn't a conversation. This was containment. And containment doesn't come with explanations. Over the next few days, the pattern repeated. More declines, more restrictions, more pressure. The boutique started bleeding, quietly at first, then faster. Because when your entire operation is built on borrowed money, and that money disappears, everything collapses, fast. I checked the logs every night, watched the activity slow, then stall, then stop. And through all of it, I stayed invisible. No calls, no visits, no reactions, just control. Because by the time they realized something was wrong, it would already be too late to fix it. They were panicking, watching their perfect little world start to crack, thinking it was a glitch, a bank issue, bad timing, anything but the truth. They didn't know the system was closing in on them. They didn't know the accounts were flagged. They didn't know the case was already built. And they definitely didn't know who was behind it. They were panicking watching their stolen empire collapse, thinking it was just a bank glitch. They didn't know the glitch had a name, and she was about to get a dinner invitation. I saw the message before I even opened it. Family dinner. Mandatory. That word, mandatory. My father didn't ask for things. He summoned them. I stared at the text for a second, then locked my phone. Didn't respond right away. Didn't need to. Because I already knew what this was. Pressure had been building for days. Accounts freezing, payments failing, credit lines collapsing. They didn't know why. But they knew something was wrong. And when things go wrong in that house, they look for someone to fix it. Or someone to blame, sometimes both. I waited an hour before replying. Okay, that was it. No questions, no pushback. Because showing resistance too early just changes the approach. I wanted them comfortable, confident, unaware. The night of the dinner, I pulled into the driveway right on time. Not early, not late. Same house. Same lights, same illusion. I stepped out of my car, glanced at the windows. Everything looked normal. That was the first tell. They always overcorrect when they're nervous. Extra food, extra noise, extra effort. But tonight, everything was controlled. Tight. That meant planning. I walked in without knocking. No one greeted me. Another tell. They were already seated, waiting. I stepped into the dining room. Same setup, same positions. Marcus at the head. Diane to his right. Chloe next to him. Exactly where she always sat. Like proximity gave her authority. No food served yet. Plates empty. That confirmed it. This wasn't dinner. This was staging, sit, my father said. Not hi. Not how are you, just sit. I pulled the chair out and took my seat. Back straight, hands still, eyes forward. No one spoke for a few seconds. They wanted me to feel it. The silence, the weight, the expectation. It didn't work. I've sat in rooms a lot worse than that. Rooms where silence meant something real. This was performance. My mother finally exhaled softly. Kendra, she started, voice already fragile. We're all under a lot of stress right now. I didn't respond, just looked at her. Let her continue. Your sister's business is going through a difficult phase, she added. Temporary. There was that word again, temporary, like repeating it made it true. Chloe sniffed quietly, pressed that tissue to her face again, right on cue. I didn't want it to get this bad, she said. I just needed a little more time. A little more time for what? More debt, more damage. I kept my face neutral. No reaction, because reacting gives them direction. My father leaned forward slightly, hands flat on the table. Same posture as always when he thought he was in control. We've come up with a solution, he said. Of course you have. He reached down and pulled out a folder, set it on the table, didn't slide it yet. Not until he had my full attention. This is a consolidation agreement, he continued. It restructures Chloe's obligations into something manageable. Manageable for who I didn't ask. I already knew. He pushed the folder toward me, slow, deliberate, like he was handing over something reasonable, something fair. I opened it. Same documents, same numbers, same structure I had already seen in my own report. Except now, it was packaged differently, cleaner, sanitized, designed to look like a solution, instead of what it actually was, a trap. I flipped through the pages slowly, not because I needed to read them, but because I wanted them to think I did. Every clause, every condition, every line crafted to do one thing: transfer liability, make it official. If I signed that document, I wouldn't just be helping Chloe. I'd be confirming the debt, accepting it, owning it, and more importantly, I'd be erasing the fraud, turning a federal crime into a family agreement, protecting them, legally, completely. It was actually well done, calculated, precise, and desperate. She made some mistakes, my father said, watching me. Nothing that can't be fixed. Mistakes, that's what he called it. $300,000, identity theft, fraud, mistakes. You have the means, he added. This is a temporary adjustment. There it was, the assumption, the belief that I existed to stabilize their chaos. That's what family does, my mother whispered. I turned another page, kept my expression flat. Chloe leaned forward slightly. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious, she said. I just need help getting through this. Help. That word again, always softer than what they actually mean. I closed the folder, slow, set my hand on top of it, looked up at all three of them. They were watching me closely now, waiting. My father's expression was calm, confident, certain. My mother looked emotional, ready to cry if needed. Chloe looked tense, but underneath that, expectation. She really thought this was going to work, that I would fall into place, do what I always did, fix things, quietly, without making it complicated. They had already decided the outcome. This meeting wasn't about convincing me. It was about formalizing it, locking it in. They thought I was reading a solution. They thought I was considering it. They thought I was weighing my options. They were wrong. I wasn't reading a contract. I was reviewing evidence, every word, every clause, every assumption built into that document, because they didn't just hand me a financial agreement. They handed me intent, proof, confirmation. They didn't realize it, but this was their confession, clean, signed, structured, and completely admissible. I tapped the edge of the folder lightly, once, then looked up, right at my father, then my mother, then Chloe, and I saw it clearly, that same expression on all three faces, smug, controlled, certain, like the outcome was already locked in, like I didn't have a choice, like I had never had a choice. They looked at me with smug expectation, waiting for the obedient soldier to fall on her sword. They had absolutely no idea that I wasn't just reading a contract. I was verifying their confession. My father pushed his chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. The sound cut through the room, sharp, ugly. You think this is funny, he snapped. Not loud at first, but tight, like he was holding something back. I didn't stop smiling, didn't look away. Yeah, I said again, calm. I do, that was enough. He stood up fully this time, palms flat on the table, leaning forward, trying to make himself bigger, more intimidating. That used to work when I was younger, not anymore. You're being unbelievably disrespectful, he said. We're trying to fix a problem and you're sitting there laughing like I understand what's actually happening. I cut in. That stopped him, just for a second. My mother shook her head quickly. Kendra, please don't start. I'm not starting anything, I said. Still calm, still steady, I'm finishing it. That made Chloe shift in her seat. Her confidence cracked just a little. What is that supposed to mean, she asked. I didn't answer her. I stood up slowly. No rush, no sudden movement, just enough to bring us eye level. Then I leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the table, mirroring my father's posture, but without the tension, without the emotion. You want me to sign this, I said, tapping the folder once. Yes, my father snapped immediately. That's exactly what we want. No, I said. That's what you need. Silence. I let it sit, then I continued. You need me to sign this so the debt becomes legitimate, I said. So it stops being fraud. My mother's face changed instantly. Small shift, but I saw it. What are you talking about, she said too quickly. I didn't look at her. I looked at my father. 4 credit lines, I said. Opened 18 months ago, all under my social security number. His expression didn't move, but his eyes did. Just a fraction. Commercial lease tied to a boutique address, I continued. And a business loan. $312,000. Chloe's hand tightened around her tissue. Stop, she said quietly. I ignored her. All applications submitted from the same residential IP address, I said. Yours, now my father moved. Just slightly, straightened up. What are you implying, he asked. I held his gaze. I'm not implying anything, I said. I'm stating facts. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Kendra, she whispered. I finally looked at her. The mailing address for every statement, I said. A P.O. box registered to you. Her face went pale, completely pale. Chloe shook her head. No, that's not it is. I said, flat, final. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, set it on the table, not sliding it, just placing it there. That's a copy of everything, I said. Credit reports, application logs, IP data, signature comparisons. No one touched it. No one even looked at it. Because they didn't need to. They already knew. My father's voice came out lower this time. Controlled again, but thinner. You're overreacting, he said. This is a misunderstanding. I almost smiled. A misunderstanding doesn't generate 4 fraudulent accounts, I said. He didn't respond. Because there wasn't a response. Chloe's breathing got heavier. This is insane, she said. Why would anyone? Because your boutique was failing, I said. That hit. Hard. She froze. You ran out of options, I continued. And instead of shutting it down, you decided to fund it using my identity. My mother shook her head, tears starting now. We were going to fix it, she said. We just needed time. You had 18 months, I said. That shut her up. I let the silence build. Then I delivered the part they didn't see coming. I already filed, I said. My father blinked. Filed what? FTC identity theft report, I said. And a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That's when it happened. The shift. Real fear. Not confusion, not anger. Fear. What? Chloe whispered. My father's face drained. Color gone. Completely gone. You didn't, he said. I did, I replied. Calm, steady, certain. And I retained legal counsel, I added. Federal fraud litigator. No one spoke. Because now they understood. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This was exposure. I gave them everything, I continued. The accounts, the IP logs, the P.O. box, the forged signatures. My mother sat down slowly, like her legs stopped working. Oh my God, she whispered. Chloe collapsed back into her chair, physically, like something had been pulled out from under her. This can't be happening, she said. But it was, and they knew it. My father tried one more time. This is your family, he said. You don't go to the authorities over something like this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see authority, I saw desperation. You already did, I said. That landed, hard. You went to the system the moment you used my name, I continued. I'm just finishing this process. Silence, heavy, final. Then I straightened up, stepped back slightly. You have 7 days, I said. My father frowned. 7 days for what? To fix it, I said. You contact the authorities. You confess. You clear my name before the investigation escalates. My mother shook her head. No, we can't. You can, I said. Or you don't. I picked up my bag. Calm, unhurried. Chloe's voice cracked. What happens if we don't? I looked at her, cold, clear. The FBI shows up, I said. With everything they already have. That broke her, completely. My father tried to speak again. This is blackmail. No, I said. This is mercy. That shut him up. Then I gave them the last piece, the one they weren't ready for. You said if I don't sign, I'm not your daughter anymore, I said. He didn't respond, didn't need to. I don't need you to disown me, I continued. I held his gaze, steady, unshaken. You can't. A pause. Just long enough. I'm firing you as my family. No one moved. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. So I turned, walked out. No hesitation, no second look. I walked out the front door, leaving them drowning in the silence of their own ruined lives. I gave them 7 days to do the right thing. But criminals rarely do the right thing when they're cornered. They do exactly what I expected. I didn't hear from them the next day, or the day after that, which told me everything. If they were going to do the right thing, they would have done it immediately. People who feel guilty don't wait. People who feel cornered stall. By day 3, the calls started. Not from them. From extended family, my aunt first. Concerned voice, careful tone. Kendra, your parents said you're going through something. Are you okay? I almost laughed. They moved fast. Reputation control. Classic. I'm fine, I said. A pause. They said you were making some serious accusations. Of course they did. They also said you're under a lot of stress, she added. That maybe you're misinterpreting things. Misinterpreting. That was the angle. Not denial. Deflection. Make me look unstable, emotional, unreliable. I kept my voice flat. I'm not misinterpreting anything. Another pause. Then she softened. Well, you know how family can be. Things get complicated. No, things don't get complicated. People make them complicated when they're trying to avoid consequences. I appreciate the concern, I said. But I have it handled. She didn't push after that. But I knew the message had already spread. By day 4, it was confirmed. Texts, calls, subtle questions wrapped in concern. Kendra, you've always been so strong. Maybe you should talk to someone. You don't want to ruin your relationship with your parents over a misunderstanding. They weren't even hiding it. They were building a narrative. I was unstable, jealous, overreacting. And the best part, they probably believed it. Because in their world, I was the quiet one, the controlled one. So if I suddenly pushed back, it must mean something was wrong with me, not them. That's how people like that think. I didn't respond, didn't defend myself, didn't correct the story, because gossip doesn't stop a federal investigation. And I didn't need approval from people who only saw half the picture. By day 5, the activity logs told me everything I needed to know. No attempts to contact authorities, no legal filings, no effort to fix anything. Just silence, which meant they had chosen, not accountability, survival. And survival for them meant denial. Day 6 was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that usually comes right before something breaks. I didn't reach out. Didn't remind them. Didn't warn them. Because I already gave them everything they needed. 7 days. A clear choice. They made it. Day 7, I was sitting in Harrison Vance's office. Same chair, same desk, same clean, controlled environment. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Just gestured to the seat. Right on time, he said. Always am. I sat down, set my phone on the table, face up, silent. He glanced at it once, expecting calls. They'll come, I said. He nodded, then turned his screen slightly toward me. Movement started early this morning, he said. I leaned forward. The first report was from the bank's fraud department. Accounts flagged, investigations escalated, access permanently revoked. Every fraudulent line tied to my name was being voided, removed, erased, clean, just like it never belonged there. That part's done, he said. Your record is already being corrected. Good. That was step 1. Then came the next update. Commercial lease enforcement. Chloe's boutique, shuttered, immediate, no grace period, no extension. When the funding disappeared, so did the operation. No inventory, no cash flow, no backup. Just a locked door and a notice. I didn't react. I already knew that was coming. You don't build something real on fake money. You build a timeline, and timelines expire. Then came the final piece. Federal action, formal subpoenas issued. Marcus Sullivan, Diane Sullivan. Charges under review, wire fraud. Aggravated identity theft. Serious. Very serious. Harrison closed the file. That's the point of no return, he said. I know. He looked at me for a second. You want to stop this, it has to happen now. I didn't hesitate. I don't. He nodded once. Then it proceeds. Simple as that. The system doesn't care about emotions. It cares about evidence. And we had plenty. That's when my phone lit up. First call, my mother. I didn't pick up. It rang out. Then another, my father, then Chloe. Back to back. Relentless. I let them all go to voicemail because I already knew what they were going to say. The first voicemail came in seconds later. My mother's voice, crying. Kendra, please. You don't understand what's happening. People are here, They're asking questions. We need you to fix this. Fix it. Of course. Still expecting me to clean it up. The second voicemail was my father. Less controlled this time, more raw. You need to call this off immediately, he said. This has gone too far. No, this had gone exactly where it was always going. The third was Chloe, barely holding it together. They shut the store down, she said. Kendra, please. I can't lose everything. I'll do anything. Just make this stop. Anything. Now. After everything. I leaned back in my chair. Listened to each message. All the way through. Didn't skip. Didn't interrupt. Just absorbed it. Not emotionally. Logically. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about consequence. They weren't calling to apologize. They weren't calling to take responsibility. They were calling because the system finally caught up to them. And they didn't know how to survive it. More voicemails came in, faster, messier, desperate. Kendra, we're family. You can't do this to us. We raised you. Think about what you're doing. I stared at the screen, watched their names pop up, disappear, then pop up again, over and over. I didn't respond, didn't pick up, didn't even type a message, because there was nothing left to say. They begged me to remember that we were family. They forgot that they had traded my name for money years ago. But the real justice wasn't just watching them face the law. It was what happened to the illusion they spent their lives building. It moved steady, which is worse if you're on the wrong side of it. Weeks turned into months. Investigations expanded. Statements were taken. Documents reviewed. Everything we built held. Defense counsel retained. Asset review in progress. Charges moving forward. That was it. No drama, no speculation. Just progress. The first real consequence hit when they had to secure legal representation. Good lawyers aren't cheap, and they didn't qualify for anything public. Not with the kind of assets they had, or used to have. So they started liquidating. Retirement accounts first, then savings. Then anything that could be turned into cash. Because when federal charges are involved, you don't get to stall. You pay, or you lose by default. The house went next. Didn't check. Didn't care. Because for me, it had already lost value. It stopped being a home a long time ago. It was just a location where bad decisions were made. I blocked their numbers the next morning, not out of anger, just efficiency. There was nothing left to discuss, and I don't keep open channels to compromise systems. The legal process didn't move fast. Every detail lined up exactly the way it needed to. There were no surprises, because we didn't leave room for any. I got updates through Harrison, short, direct. No emotion. Exactly how I preferred it. The same house with the polished table. The same one where they sat across from me like they owned the outcome. Listed, sold, quietly. No announcement, no explanation. Just gone. I didn't drive by. Chloe lasted a little longer. Not because she was smarter, because she was in denial. At first she tried to keep the image alive. Posted old photos, recycled content. Pretended everything was normal. But that doesn't hold. Not when your business is shut down, not when vendors stop responding, not when the money disappears. Her friends vanished fast. That was predictable. Influencer circles aren't built on loyalty. They're built on access. Once she lost that, she lost them. One by one, no dramatic fallout, no confrontation, just silence, which is worse. Because silence doesn't give you anything to fight. Eventually, the post stopped. Then the account went quiet. Then it disappeared. Last I heard, she was working retail, minimum wage, folding clothes in a store that sold things she used to pretend she owned. I didn't verify it. Didn't need to. The pattern was obvious. My parents tried a different approach. Letters, actual letters, handwritten, long, emotional. Every one of them followed the same structure. Denial, justification, guilt. Kendra. We never meant for things to go this far. We were trying to protect the family. You've always been strong. We thought you could handle it. That one almost made me laugh. Then came the guilt. We're your parents. Family should forgive. Don't let this destroy everything. They still didn't understand. There was nothing left to destroy. They had already done that, years ago. The moment they decided my identity was something they could use. I didn't respond. Not once. Didn't open the door to conversation. Didn't acknowledge receipt. Because engagement creates leverage. And I wasn't giving them any. Harrison asked me once. You sure you don't want to reply, no? I said. He nodded. Cleaner that way. Exactly. My side of things resolved faster. Once the fraud was fully documented and processed, everything cleared. Credit restored, accounts removed, flags lifted, like it never happened. Except it did. And the system knew it. My clearance review resumed. No delays. No complications. If anything, the documentation strengthened my profile. Proof of response. Proof of control. Proof that I handled a breach correctly. That matters. More than people realize. A few weeks later, I got the call. Promotion, new contract, higher level, more responsibility, better pay. I accepted. Not because I needed it, because I earned it. I moved into a new place after that. Still nothing flashy, still controlled. But better, quieter, secure. Everything where it should be. No noise, no tension, no expectations. Just space. Real space. The kind you don't notice until it's there. I'd come home after work, set my keys down, sit in silence, and for the first time in a long time, there was nothing pulling at me. No calls, no pressure, no underlying obligation waiting to surface. Just quiet. And that quiet, that was the real reward. Not the money, not the promotion, not even the outcome. The absence of chaos. The absence of manipulation. The absence of people who only valued me when I was useful. That's what peace actually looks like. Clean, simple, uncomplicated. Sometimes I'd think back to that night, the table, the contract, the way they looked at me like I was already owned, and I'd realize something. They never saw me as a person. Not really. I was a resource, a solution, something to pull from when things went wrong. And when you see someone that way, you stop treating them like family. You start treating them like an asset. And assets get used until they're secured. And once they're secured, the people who depended on them, they collapse. Every time. They demanded I pay their debt or lose my family. I chose to lose them. Because when people steal your identity, they aren't treating you like family. They're treating you like an asset. And the thing about assets is, once you secure them, the thieves always go bankrupt. I sat in my living room one night with nothing on. No TV, no music, no background noise, just silence. And for the first time in my life, it didn't feel empty. It felt controlled. That's when it hit me. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I finally understood something I should have learned years ago. Not everyone who calls themselves family is actually acting like one. That sounds obvious, but it's not. Because when you grow up inside it, you don't question it. You adapt to it. You normalize it. You explain it away. I did that for years. I told myself they were just difficult. That Chloe needed more support. That my parents had different expectations. That if I just stayed steady, stayed reliable, stayed quiet, eventually they'd see me. Eventually, things would balance out. They didn't. They adjusted. That's the part I missed. People like that don't change when you give more. They recalibrate. They figure out how much you're willing to tolerate. And then they build their behavior around that limit. And if you don't have a limit, they don't stop. That was my mistake. Not trusting them. That part was obvious. My mistake was letting them define my role in their system. I was the stable one, the responsible one, the one who had it together. Sounds like a compliment, right? It wasn't. It was positioning. Because once you're labeled that way, you become the solution to every problem. Not because you offered, because you didn't refuse. There's a difference. And I didn't understand that difference soon enough. I thought being strong meant being available. I thought being reliable meant stepping in when things went wrong. I thought staying quiet meant staying in control. But that's not control. That's accessibility. And if someone sees you as accessible, they don't treat you like a person. They treat you like a resource. That's exactly what happened. They didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy me. It didn't start like that. It started small. A favor here, a little help there, a conversation where I was expected to understand, to compromise, to adjust, And every time I did, I made it easier for the next step. Until one day, the next step wasn't small anymore. It was $300,000. It was my identity. It was my entire financial life being used without my permission. And the worst part, they didn't even think it was wrong. They thought it was justified. Because in their minds, I wasn't losing anything. I was just helping. That's when everything became clear. If someone only shows up when they need something, they're not family, they're a transaction. And transactions have terms, even if you never agreed to them. Looking back, I don't regret cutting them off. I regret how long it took me to understand that I had to. Because the real cost wasn't the money, it wasn't the stress, it wasn't even the betrayal. It was the time. Years of operating inside a system where I was valued based on what I could provide, not who I was. That changes you. It makes you second-guess your instincts, makes you question your reactions, makes you feel like saying no is wrong, even when everything in you knows it's right. That's the part people don't talk about. The internal damage. The way it rewires how you think about responsibility. Because when you've been conditioned to carry everything, putting something down feels unnatural, even when it's crushing you. And here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Being the bigger person is not always the right move. Sometimes it's just a polite way of saying, let them keep using you. I heard that phrase my entire life. Be the bigger person. Don't escalate. Keep the peace. But whose peace, not mine? Never mine. Peace built on your silence isn't peace. It's control. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. That's why I didn't argue that night. That's why I didn't negotiate. That's why I didn't try to fix it. Because there was nothing to fix. The system was working exactly the way it was designed to. For them, not for me. So I made a different decision. I stopped participating. And that's the part most people struggle with. Because walking away doesn't feel like strength. It feels like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like you're giving something up, but you're not. You're reclaiming something. Control, choice, clarity. And once you have that, everything else gets easier. Not simple, but clear. You stop explaining yourself. You stop negotiating your boundaries. You stop trying to prove your value to people who benefit from undervaluing you. Because you finally understand something fundamental. Your value doesn't come from what you fix. It comes from what you refuse to carry. That's the shift. That's the difference. That's the lesson I learned too late. And if there's one thing I'd tell you after everything that happened, it's this. Pay attention to how people treat you when you stop being useful. That's the real relationship, not the version they show when everything is working in their favor. And be honest with yourself. How many times have you been told to be the bigger person, when what they really meant was, be easier to use? I leaned back in my chair and looked around my place again. Same quiet, same control. But this time I wasn't thinking about what happened. I was thinking about how easily it could have gone differently. Because here's the part most people don't want to admit. What happened to me? It wasn't rare, it wasn't extreme. It was just exposed. Family identity theft happens more than people think. It just doesn't get talked about. Because it's uncomfortable. Because it sounds ugly. Because no one wants to believe the people closest to them would do something like that. But proximity isn't protection, it's access. And access is what creates risk. Not strangers, not hackers. People who already have your information, your social security number, your old documents, your habits, your blind spots. That's the real vulnerability. I didn't get hacked. I got used. And there's a difference. So let's get practical, because this isn't about fear, it's about control. First thing, check your credit. Not once a year, not when something feels off. Regularly. Set a schedule, monthly if you can. Quarterly at minimum. Because the longer something sits undetected, the harder it is to unwind. And don't assume you'll notice. You won't, not right away. That's the whole point. The second thing, lock your file. Credit freeze. Not a fraud alert. Not a notification system. A freeze. Because alerts tell you something already happened. A freeze stops it from happening at all. It's not complicated. Takes less than an hour. And it closes the door before anyone tries to walk through it. Third, stop treating personal information like it's harmless. I don't care if it's your parents, your siblings, anyone. If they don't need it, they don't get it. That includes social security numbers, full account access, signed documents you didn't read carefully. Because once it leaves your control, it's not yours anymore. And intent doesn't matter at that point, only outcome. Here's something most people get wrong. Trust is not a security system. You can trust someone and still protect yourself from them. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they shouldn't be, because people don't always act based on who they are. They act based on pressure, desperation, opportunity. And when those three line up, even people you thought you knew can make decisions you didn't expect. That's reality. So you build systems that don't rely on trust. You build systems that rely on control. That's what I did after the fact. You should do it before. Another one, never co-sign anything you don't fully control. I don't care what the story is. I don't care how urgent it sounds. If your name is on it, it's yours, legally, financially, completely. And once it goes bad, you don't get to explain your way out of it. You absorb it. That's how the system works, which brings me to something else. Pressure is a red flag. Every time. If someone is rushing you to sign something, it's not because it's good for you. It's because it's good for them. People don't apply pressure when the situation is clean. They apply pressure when there's something they don't want you to fully process. So slow it down, step back. Review everything, and if you don't understand it, you don't sign it. Simple. Another thing I learned. Keep your finances separate, completely. No shared accounts unless absolutely necessary. No overlapping responsibilities. No blurred lines. Because blurred lines create confusion. And confusion creates opportunity, especially for the wrong person. And here's the part people struggle with the most. You are allowed to say no, without explanation, without apology, without negotiation. You don't need a dramatic reason. You don't need to justify your decision. No is a complete answer. And the people who push back on that, they're the ones who benefit from you not using it. That's the pattern, every time. Now let's talk about something people avoid, family pressure, because that's the hardest one to navigate. It doesn't come in the form of threats. It comes in the form of guilt. We're family, you're the only one who can help. Don't you care about us? That's not support. That's leverage. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll respond emotionally instead of strategically. That's how they get you. That's how they got me. Not with force, with expectation. And expectation is harder to fight because it feels like responsibility. But it's not. Responsibility is something you choose. Expectation is something someone places on you. There's a difference. And once you see it, you start making different decisions. Better ones, cleaner ones. Decisions that protect you instead of exposing you. Because at the end of the day, no one is going to protect your life the way you can. Not your family, not your friends, not the system. You. That's it. So you build boundaries, you build awareness, you build systems that don't rely on hope. Because hope doesn't stop fraud. Preparation does. And the sooner you understand that, the less likely you are to end up where I was, sitting in a room, looking at a number that never should have been tied to your name, realizing too late that trust wasn't enough to protect you. It never was. I sat there one night, same spot, same silence, and I realized something most people don't want to admit. If you watched this whole thing and thought, that could never happen to me, you're probably wrong, not because your situation is identical, but because the pattern is. Most people watching this right now, you already know someone like my family, maybe not as extreme, maybe not criminal, but the same behavior, the same dynamic, the same quiet expectation that you'll step in, fix things, carry more than you should. You felt it, that moment where something didn't sit right, where a request felt off, where help started to feel like obligation, and you ignored it, not because you're weak, because you're conditioned. We all are. Conditioned to keep the peace, conditioned to avoid conflict, conditioned to prioritize relationships over reality. And that's exactly what people like that rely on. They don't need to force you. They just need you to hesitate, to second guess yourself long enough to say yes. That's it. And once you do, the line moves, always, a little more, a little further, until you don't even recognize where your boundary used to be. That's how it works. Not in one big moment, in 100 small ones that you let slide, that you explain away, that you tell yourself don't matter, until suddenly they do. And by then it's complicated, it's emotional. It feels too big to walk away from, so you stay, you adjust, you tell yourself it's not that bad. You tell yourself it'll get better. You tell yourself they'll change. They won't, not because they can't, because they don't have to, not as long as the system works. And if you're still in it, the system is working. That's the part most people avoid, because it puts responsibility back on you. Not blame. Responsibility. There's a difference. You're not responsible for what they did. You are responsible for what you allow moving forward. That's the shift. That's the uncomfortable truth. Because once you see it, you can't keep pretending. You can't keep playing the same role. You either change your position or you accept the outcome. And most people don't want to make that decision because it costs something. It costs comfort. It costs familiarity. Sometimes it costs relationships. That's the part no one prepares you for. Walking away doesn't feel like power, at least not at first. It feels like loss. It feels like you're the one breaking something, even when you didn't build it that way, even when you didn't cause it. That's the emotional trap. Guilt. Guilt is the most effective control tool toxic people have. Not anger, not threats, guilt. Because guilt keeps you connected, keeps you responsive, keeps you available, and as long as you feel it, they still have access. That's why I didn't wait for closure. I didn't need them to admit anything. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need understanding. Because closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you deciding you're done. Done explaining, done negotiating, done trying to be seen by people who benefit from not seeing you. That's where it ends. Not with a conversation, with a decision. And once that decision is made, everything changes. Not instantly, but permanently. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop asking for permission. You start setting terms. That's real control. That's real freedom. And here's something else people get wrong. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. I didn't win because they lost. I didn't win because their lives fell apart. That was just consequence. I won because they no longer had access to me. That's it. No leverage, no influence, no control, nothing. And once you reach that point, you don't need to fight anymore. Because there's nothing left to fight over. Just your life, on your terms. So let me ask you something. Be honest. Is there someone in your life right now who only values you when you're useful? Who only shows up when they need something? Who makes you feel guilty for setting limits? If there is, then you already know. You just haven't acted on it yet. And I get it. That's the hardest part. Not seeing the problem, doing something about it. But ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It just makes it more expensive later. So don't wait for it to hit. The level-minded. Don't wait for legal consequences, or financial damage, or a breaking point you can't ignore. Deal with it early, deal with it clean, and most importantly, deal with it on your terms, because no one else is going to do that for you. And if this story made you think about something you've been avoiding, don't ignore that. That's awareness. That's the moment where things can change. So subscribe to the channel, because we don't just tell stories here, we break patterns. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need.